So it's my pleasure to introduce today Lisa Bobbitt. Lisa Bobbitt is a lead privacy engineering architect in our Cisco privacy office. She holds multiple certifications when it comes to security and privacy. I can just name a few: CISSP, CIPM, CIPP-E, CDPSE, and I can tell you, I just know 2 of them. So it must be big certification. So if I can tell you more about Lisa, Lisa is very passionate about embedding privacy awareness, governance, and technology across Cisco. And she does that by building a foundation of years on working in mainframe, connectivity, mobile routing protocol, innovative concept in 3D, voice, video, data, in event management, government adaptation of commercial offers, embedded trust anchor, and now privacy. And Lisa believes that everyone as a digital citizen should be a privacy advocate by first understanding the value of authorized use of personal identified information, and then applying controls to the risk, the potential harm to themselves and others. So without further ado, I'll let Lisa to start. Maybe before she starts, this session, unlike other sessions, we'll make the session very much interactive. There will be a part where Lisa will set the stage with a presentation, and the bigger part of this session will be about you, the attendees, posting questions, any concern that you have about privacy, on how you design privacy in your architecture, on how you work with privacy on your day-to-day, and also have some questions that we got from some of you guys before. So thank you, Lisa. I'll pass you the ball. The ball's already passed to you for you to share your desktop and start with the presentation. Thank you, Lisa. You're on mute, by the way.
I know, I had to unmute myself. Sorry. You would think after all these years of working in WebEx, I would know better. Hold on 1 second. I want to get back to the beginning of my presentation. For some reason, it started in a bad place. So, thank you for letting me be here. I have been at Cisco for 25 years and have had the most wonderful experience of being able to try very many different things, as Serge explained. But I have found my passion in data privacy because when I was a small child, I really wanted to be able to get to information. And I felt like Cisco is a great place to actually pull that information and allowing us to connect to everything. But now as I've grown with this digital environment, I really believe we as people need to have that ability to control our own data as we become part of the digital era. So I am very passionate about it. So you probably might hear that as I go through this. Feel free to ask any questions. Serge will stop me and ask me the questions if I don't see them in this, as I've got my screen in full mode. But anyway, so let me just explain that we are looking at so many digital interactions today, and there are so much data in the zettabytes that will be available to us. It says in 2025, that's only 4 years away. In fact, less than 4 years away now. And so what we want to be really aware of is that digitally, we are moving very quickly, especially during this pandemic time where almost all of us have gone remote. Our whole world has gone into interactions every day of passing data, and it has data that is, of course, our business data, it's our home data, our environmental data, but then it's also our personal data. And we really need to make sure that our data is being used for our value and not for our harm. So what we want to make sure is that we're looking at that. And then we also understand that that data, as it's being gathered from all these places, are not giving people the ability to make decisions about us without us making those decisions for ourselves. But what is really important to us in this space is that we do make sure that we watch over that harm, that there is harm in the collection of data, there's harm in the processing of data, there's harm in sharing that data. And then, of course, there's that ability for someone to invade and take over our data. So all of those parts of the data life cycle, we have to be very careful with. So we not only have to be private and know about how we're using our data, but we have to protect it. So data protection as well as data management of our use is really partial of what makes up privacy. And of course, around the world, there's so many regulations and laws out there. Every country has some either a national level, or they have sectorial level. And so if you look at, say, GDPR, which covers all of Europe, they have kind of the gold standard for privacy today. And then other countries have been moving forward. Brazil has theirs. We just saw it come up for Singapore has theirs. And now the US has been starting some of the states here. California has done one, Virginia is getting ready to do one. And what we're seeing is that need for people to understand that it's very important to us as people, but also as countries and market segments, that we comply to the regulations and law so that we don't harm and we do get the benefit. And then the other piece of this is that people are making decisions that if they don't think we're doing a good thing with data, we're not taking care of the data that has been entrusted to us, they don't want to do business with us. And we have seen multiple surveys over the time period that says this is true, and it's just becoming more and more part of the story. Our CEO, Chuck Robbins, made a statement, and luckily for my team, which I'm part of the privacy office, it's kind of become our gold standard, that says privacy is a fundamental right. And we have to have the ability to keep it safe and transparent, and we have to protect it. So that has been our kind of mission as part of Cisco, to build in privacy wherever we can, by process, by technology, and into our people by awareness. So we kind of use those three pillars to build out this world. But what is privacy? Every company, every organization has to define what privacy means to them. Cisco has defined theirs in this way that I'm showing you here. And we used the baseline of the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations from Europe, because like I said, it's kind of the gold standard for what's out there today of what we believe we should do. And so we want to do the fair and legitimate processing of personally identifiable information. And when we talk about fair, there's a whole set of controls that we want to build around it by design from the beginning, to think about what we're collecting. Are we keeping the data at the level of quality that's useful, that we're only doing what we said we would do with it, that we're only doing it per purpose, that we only use it and we only share it with others by its use, by what we've agreed to, that we have those securities, the encryptions, the access management, the ability to make sure that that it's being backed up, that we've done all the level of security that we need to in that space, and that we allow the data subject, the individual, to actually help manage it. So giving them their data subject rights. And the baseline of that is that we have to have quality and we have to have accountability. So we have to know that when we have data and we're using it, or something happens to it, we try to fix it. And we can't be perfect at this, because the only way you can totally protect data is, of course, to not use it, not have it available at all. And so that's not really useful in our digital space. Legitimate basis comes everything from contracts to consent, to all of the public and legitimate interests, vital interests per governments, and compliance with whatever legal obligations we have. Most of our products and services are under contractual necessity. We make a contract with our customers, and they in turn tell us, as the controller of their data, what we should be doing to process their data. We also maybe, when we're using something like we are here with you with WebEx, we may get consent. We may ask, can we turn on facial recognition? Can we turn on something in this space? And you would have to consent explicitly, say yes, because we believe in explicit consent versus opt out. So we want to opt in with you. Then processing. When people think about processing, they usually think about that I'm just using it. But in the sense of this terminology, it's from the time you collect it or create it until what time you throw it away. So it's the whole life cycle of what we're going to do with data. And that data that we're focusing on is that data that can either identify a person directly or can indirectly come with a collection of data, determine who they are. So it's like my name, it's maybe the lady or the woman that is at my address. It may be something that says the CEO of Cisco in 2021. And I don't even have to say his name, but we know exactly who he is. It doesn't mean that if I say who is the president of the United States in 2021, that you know exactly who it is, because we've had two. We had one until the 20th of January, and now we have a second one. So they're the things you have to kind of think about. It's very contextual of what personal data is, and personally identifiable information can be found in a piece of data or in that collection of data. But what it does is it identifies a person, and that person, by the way, in the way that Cisco works with it, they have to be a living person. So we work with that. This is a little different than the work that we do when we say we are watching over customer data, which is entrusted data, because personal data can be customer data. It also can be your employee data. It can be people who are just interested in the data in something that Cisco is doing. So if you just come over and you actually just come and do registration at something, you give us some of your personal data. You may not be a customer yet, you may not be an employee yet, but you would still be sharing your personal data with us. So we have to manage any time that personal data is given to us. So I say that, and then I say, how do we take care of it? How do I know what data I'm processing? How do I know what is my inventory of data? And then what do I have to do with it? What are the rules? And so the companies that you work with, the organizations that you spend time with, they have to have a policy. They have to have already determined what their rules are to make sure data is governed well, that it's got the integrity, that it's backed up, that it's deleted when it needs to be, that it's retained for a certain length of time if it needs to be, that is protected, that we've got that encryption and that ability to keep access management in place, that it is working, that you've worked with both in transit or in rest, and then the privacy, that data subject rights, the minimization of use, the collection of data, all of the things that we're talking about. What are those policies and what are my rules about them? And then what kind of environment am I in? If you're in medical, you have that type of statements, as well as you may have the rules about healthcare. Or if you're in financial, you may have some specific rules about financial data. Data that is sensitive, personal identification, things that are identified that I can't change, like my nationality, I can change it, my cultural background, my sexual orientation, my gender, any of these things that are me that are considered sensitive. And they come again from that viewpoint of where GDPR has defined sensitivity of something that a person really can't change about themselves. So we want to make sure we watch over that. There's also sensitive data, like I said, in children's data or in healthcare data or in financial data. So it's data that could bring great harm to us if it's taken and used in a bad way for us. And of course, most companies are looking at privacy now going, why is it so important? And it's because people want to be able to trust you. They want to be able to trust that you're doing the right things with their data, that when you say something in your notice, that you actually are backing it up. And then we work through the whole concept of what do I have to do? What do I know? What do I have to get done to make sure I've made things private? And then how do I prioritize that work? Because we can't always, in a development environment and building out something, do everything at the same time. How do I decide what do I do first? And then how do I put that whole statement, because privacy can't be just done in one place, but has to be spread across everything. How do I develop those processes, technologies, and awareness? And that's the work that I do at Cisco, is that I actually spend time looking at how to engineer that work. And we call it privacy engineering. Privacy engineering is what we call the answer, and we bring it into a multitude of steps so that we can teach this and reuse it with a consistent way. It's our methodology to help us design products, purchase products, or partner with someone so that we can build and manage the system, the processing activities, that in a way that keeps that data managed at what we've agreed to throughout its whole life cycle. So we look at its goals, we look at what we're trying to do, we look at that policy that we've built, we determine what we have to do as the controls, be it a process, training, or a mechanism. We then verify we did what we said we were going to do, and we feed it back into our system. And that last step, because things are always changing in a cloud environment, in an IoT environment, in environments, we see step six as much as important as step one, is that we're constantly going through this cycle, and we have to be able to verify these things. So I just wanted to bring one more thing up, is that most of us who grew up in development environments are used to doing things, building it out and making it run. We also have the concept that data can have its own life cycle, that it may have been built in a primary way, as the primary user collecting it or creating it, but it may be shared with someone else. It may actually be transferred to something else. And we need to make sure we keep that life cycle in place, from collection, usage, sharing, curating, retention, to deletion. So we have that opportunity to look at it across the board. And at Cisco, the people who look at this work, we call them data stewards. They could be a data owner or a data trustee, but we know they're stewarding the data across its full life cycle. So we watch over things in that way so that it can be maximize its value and minimize its risk. So that's kind of where we are today at Cisco. That's kind of my opening. So I would love to hear your questions, but I just want you to make sure that you always know, if you can imagine it, you can build it securely and private. And if you've got lots of information you want to see, we have a lot of information about privacy engineering, our privacy data sheets about what we do with our products, as well as our data maps that show where data is being transferred at the trust portal at cisco.com. And I think it's a great way to see the whole picture of what privacy is about. So, sir, do you have any questions for me?
Yes. I would like to have the poll. Can you pass me the poll, Kristen?
Yes.
I can share my screen because I've received some questions already from some instructors. So allow me to share my screen in a minute. Okay, second. Please do let me know when my screen appears. It should be appearing in a moment. Can you see my?
Yes, now we can.
So we're able to get some questions from some instructor before the session, and we're going to use those questions to try to guide the dialogue today. So I have a question for you coming from, actually two questions, Lisa, coming from Olga Horst Benson from Halmstad University, Sweden. Sorry, Olga, if I didn't pronounce the university name well, or your surname. So the first question is, what kind of risk exists with using surveillance technology without considering the privacy aspect? For example, using face recognition system and privacy versus security. We can start with that one, and then we can.
Yeah, let's start with that one. So the big risk in that is, especially without consideration to privacy, puts you in a position that you are putting someone at harm. That if you're not thinking about what you could do to harm them by just doing surveillance with your technology, you can easily put them in a position that they, even though you were trying to, quote, protect them maybe with surveillance, you may harm them. So in our space, we actually have asked all of our teams that use video at all, be it WebEx, be it our Meraki tools, all the things, what can we do to help people understand what we should be able to do for privacy? And we've asked them to actually, like I said, minimize the data that they save, minimize what they can do, or actually anonymize what they can. If you're trying to count, say, number of people who've come into a building by surveillance, instead of keeping the video, do the processing, count it, and anonymize the data, so I can count that there's 25 people in the building, but I don't have to look at my face or your face. So there's so much risk in if you just give someone technology without the rules, without the policies, and without the controls that they can be aware of. So privacy requires that control to be built in, but it also requires you to have notice and transparency to those end users. And many countries, by the way, will put it's a violation of those that without considerations to privacy, especially in the EU, that if you don't know about that you're being surveilled, you really can be it's a criminal offense kind of thing. But what we have built into the work that we do for privacy engineering is to ask those questions, be very clear about what you are doing and what you're not doing with the camera. We, as the controller, if it's a cloud, we have a little bit more control over not stepping outside of the rules. If it's a customer who is actually implemented on site, we've built in as much as we can, but we understand that they are the controller, and then they are at liability than Cisco as the technology vendor. But we don't want anyone to get harmed by Cisco or its products. So we try really hard to give people as much information transparently and explainability to what we do. Does that help?
Thank you. Yeah, but yeah, how about, like, if I remain on the first question also, she mentioned on face recognition. How about, in the universities where we have students required to have the fingerprint taken, like as a scan before entering some sort of building or a lab? Do they have any say, or depending on the law, but to know when the data is being deleted or saved? Or how do we do, let's say, for lecturers which are today and they have to design some sort of system? Do you have any that you can give them as advice for that case?
Yeah. So I think each of those types of recognition systems that use biometrics have to be built very carefully so that two things don't happen. One is someone can't steal your biometrics and impersonate you, because you can't replace your eyes, your fingerprints, things like that. So it's really important that we're very careful with that. Most of the products that we would recommend as a privacy baseline for that is for them to actually scan it, but not store it, just answer the yes or no and make it and take it away. Or if it is stored, hash it so that you have to unhash to make a connection and then re-encrypt it. So there's different ways to anonymize that data or de-identify that data for that. The other piece of that story is that every system should have notification. So it's sometimes when it's one that's in a public place, you might see a symbol that says, look at this Q code, or look at the, swipe this with your phone, or have a sign that says you're under surveillance, and you can make a decision, am I going in or not, or you have a place to actually go and talk to someone. Of course, people don't want the people need to be in a place. We don't want them not to come in because of this. So there should always be a human in that loop of making those types of decisions, so that you can come up with a different way to handle identifying someone who's coming in. But the system itself should be trying to protect that data as much as possible behind the swipe.
Thank you. And you mentioned about saving data, hashing and unhashing data for using. Saving those biometric data on premise or to any cloud provider? What would be like the trade-off for you?
It depends on again what level of security you've determined is your cloud provider taking care of this. I mean, we go through a security assessment of every cloud platform and software that we use to make sure that they can meet the same level of control that we would meet. But truthfully, any of this that we can put to the edge and make the decision out at the edge, the better it is, because then it's not traveling across the network. It's not, it shrinks its attack space, right? So we highly recommend that where we can get the processing done at the edge, it's a good choice. But again, if not, then making sure that you've encrypted in transit, that you've got, really strong hashing in different places so that you can make sure that no one's taking the most sensitive data, which biometric data is considered sensitive personal data.
Okay. Do you want to get in to answer the second question before jumping to one question from the audience?
Yeah, let me just answer what the main challenge to privacy by design is. Right. It's really getting the awareness, making people aware that they need to think about privacy when they are under the gun to complete a project or to be innovative about something. And especially with AI ML today, where people want to see what could happen, the whole concept that, hey, I'm just doing research or I'm just checking something out and not thinking about where the data came from or whose data it is or do we have rights to it, needs to be built into your process. And that's why privacy by design is so important to us. So biggest thing is awareness to me. And we spend a lot of time with training to make sure people start asking that first question. Am I doing the things in a private way?
Thank you. There's a question from Deborah McCusker. As you know, 99% of people joining this call are educational expert. So she want to find out if a person is interested in pushing in the data privacy field, what pathway would you recommend?
I would recommend the way I ended up doing it. 5 years ago, I read a book called The Privacy Engineering Manifesto. It's free online if you go to Apress or to Amazon, and you can pull it down, and it talks about privacy engineering. When I read the book, it really showed me that there was an opportunity for us to truly build this in, instead of it being a principle or being something that is a legal statement, that we as engineers could actually internalize this into our technologies, into our processes. And since then, I have just it's my passion. I just really truly believe that we have this opportunity. And I had never worked in data or in privacy until 5 years ago. So I just say start it, read it, and then if you've got questions, there's training like the IAPP. There's so much information out there. Read the GDPR as what the rules are that are going on as a baseline. All of that's great ways to get started with it. And in game, then kind of do a survey on your own environment and see where you're sharing or using your own data. So all of those, I think, are things that'll help you get started. And then there are universities working in this and things like that too. But truthfully, it becomes something that it is so normal for us to secure our homes and secure our personal stuff. This is just one more piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. So will you say that there's only, let's say, awareness skill, learning the process of securing things, or do you believe also they have some technical skills that our student or lecturer should acquire in order for them to get into that field?
Well, I still think, as I said earlier, you've got to understand security, because all data requires security. So having that baseline of understanding confidentiality and integrity and access management for the for the CIA of security, it gives you the foundation of what privacy needs. So I'd always say, feel comfortable with the baseline of security, so that your privacy is easy for you to say, okay, now I'm looking at one class of data and doing more to it. And of course, then it's flipping the other side, you may be coming from a legal side of the house and looking at it, from a policy or a way of a customer experience or any of these other things that you come in at technology from, and going, how do I make this better for the person? So it can be from the technical security side, but it also can be from the political side of it, or from even the the customer experience side of it. It's got multiple pieces.
Yeah. So we move now from Mark Francis from SCTechnology Technology Training Academy in Egypt. The question is straightforward. How to secure your privacy while you're using social media? What should you share with others?
Yeah.
More about like how.
Well, first of all, make sure you've got really good passwords on your social media, so no one else can break into it or try to reuse it. I don't put a lot of information up on my social media. I do use it because I like to stay in touch with my family. I use Twitter for work so that I can be part of the privacy community. I have LinkedIn because I'm interested in seeing what other things are always out there going on. But I limit what I put out there as things that I'm willing to share publicly. And then in the sense of my family side, I never share children's data. I will encourage people with their children, but if I take a picture of your kid, I'm going to send you the picture. I won't put it up. I don't put up any data where I'm at until I'm back home because I don't want people to know I'm not at home. So I am a little bit paranoid about social media. It's usable, but you have to think about it just like if you were putting something on your front porch. Do I really want to share this with the world? Right?
And do you have any way that that you know personally where someone can access is online vulnerability to find out like what is known online about themselves?
Yeah, I mean, there are multiple applications out there. I don't have any I can recommend. But you can always search for your own name. I've done that before, just Googling it. But there are other things that people look at for for identity. But I try really hard not to spend a lot of my energies trying to figure that out at this point. So I don't have a lot of recommendations there.
Next question from Inge van Hossela from AP August School in Belgium. How can I explain to non-IT people that turning on your camera in Zoom meeting, for example, might be security risk?
Okay, I've been working with this with my family because many of our children are on Zoom doing remote learning here in North Carolina, which is where I live. And I've explained to them, it's like opening a window up and saying, neighbors, I open my curtains up and look at me, look at what's going on in my house, look what's behind me. I've got, someone's birthday, something up. I may have a big calendar with where we're going to be behind me. People may walk behind me. The camera will pick up everything. If you're going to turn on your camera, please use one of the shills with it so that they only see you as much as possible, and make sure that the people in your home are actually not close by. I'd also say the same thing with the smart speakers and the smart TVs. Remember, they're listening, and please make sure that what you're saying is not giving away the things you use for your passwords or for where you are going to be personally, so that you can be physically safe. So it's a statement of them thinking about their environment and who is there. And if their children are there, we have to be, ultra safe with children, or our elder people who may not know better, help them understand when and where Zoom, turning on the light. It's like, when am I going to be outside and people can see me?
It seems like it's a lot. Imagine then you have some group of people listen to how much it takes for somebody to be online, and in terms of like stay secure by analyzing and making sure that nothing happened. If somebody say I rather not even be online, how you respond to that person.
Well, my father was very much like that. He really did not want to be online. But when I showed him the information that he could get to and that he could spend time with us as a family, we just chose certain things that allow him to be on. And we made sure that he didn't put any credit cards online. He didn't share any financial data online because of people trying to scam or trying to phish him. So we limited, and we didn't give out his email address, and we didn't give out. So, you have to make sure that people who aren't comfortable with it, that you give them the boundaries that they're comfortable working with. But again, and I would go up about once a month and make sure that there was nothing that had come in on his system that might harm him. So you have to help support them if they're not comfortable with it. Just like you helping lock the doors when someone's not comfortable with their own keys,
Thank you. So let me see if I have any question on the chat at the moment. I don't have, so let me move to the question that we have here. It's a question from Ligang Lu, Technical College of Chengdu in China. I guess you answered the first part, what data should be kept private. We want to find out, because also in this country, regulation doesn't depend on the personal will or public regulation. And if it should depend on public regulation, who should be appointed to make that regulation? That's a question that came from.
Yes. So again, what data should be kept private is data that is risky. And risk is something you have to determine by the value that it's going to give you as a person versus the harm that it could bring to you. So you have control as a data subject right for a certain amount of that. But then you have a certain amount of, I've chosen to work. Like I work for Cisco. So Cisco gives me my laptop. And so things that are run on Cisco's laptop is Cisco's data about me. Now I can choose to put any personal stuff. They allow me to use it for some personal stuff, but I choose not to do any personal stuff on my laptop. So it doesn't end up being captured here. So you have to be very aware of what data should be kept private and what. Now there's some things that are regulations, like I said, sensitive data, healthcare data, children's data, financial data. There's regulations wrapped around that. And then in the environments like GDPR, depending on which country you are in, or which region you're in, they may have put their own set of rules around what is sensitive data and wrap special work around that. My view of it is that anything about me that will help you, that will help someone help me do things better, I may want to share, but I don't share a lot of my data. I don't feel comfortable sharing it. I'm a little bit paranoid, and I know that, but because I've lived in security and privacy for 10 years, but I believe that I should be very aware that if I'm going to give it to you as data, that I get something back from it. So I'm very careful about what I can do. But the regulations themselves are very clear about data subject rights. They are very clear about what data is private data and what is sensitive. Private data is everything that defines me. Sensitive data, which is meaning keeping it private in the sense of storing it and not sharing it without consent, becomes even more because of that harm. So it is not a yes, no, it is pretty much a continuum. And you have to, with your policy, decide where that continuum starts and stops for privacy. Now, like I said, we take advantage of building that policy off of the regulations that we run in. There's 120 plus regulations in the world right now about data privacy and protection. And so we take advantage of putting our bar high and be very conservative about what we consider privacy, so that everything that really identifies a person, we keep as PII, and we give the controls around that. So like even when you're just logging on, we know that's PII. We know it's public because you've just put your name up here where I can see your name, but it doesn't mean automatically that I have access to use it. So we still have the use limitation, even if I have the view limitation and view opportunity for it. Does that make sense? It's like I said, it's very hard. Privacy is not as easy as other engineering things where it's a yes, no, or on or off. It really is a continuum, and you have to think about, can this identify a person, i.e. can identify me if it was my data, and B, could it harm me, and what benefit do I have with it, and do I want to share that? So that's kind of how you answer that. And one of the areas that a lot of people who grew up in the digital era, they're very comfortable dropping their name and their friends and their pictures over to any application that's in their smartphone or on their laptop. I don't do that because I've given away not only my data, but someone else's data. So that's another area we really should be very aware of. Does depend on the public regulation is kind of the bar, but personal will mine's higher than what the public regulation gives us today.
Okay. Let's see if I have other question. I think that must be the last question probably from Travis Bonfigli from University of Maryland, the United States. How much security clearance information along with this agency that he works for should I put to the profile resume when I'm trying to get a job?
I would put as little as possible. I would just say, please contact me for my clearance information, and then have them contact you versus putting it out there so that anyone and everyone can see it. It's just another one of those things that I think with security clearances from, different governments, that is something that is very precious and you worked very hard for, and you don't want someone else to take advantage of that information. You can, as I just kind of showed, that's kind of de-identifying your information. You still say I've got clearance, but you're not saying what it is until someone asks for it. That's a good example of how you can do privacy and de-identify things. So.
Yeah. I think that was a question that we got from instructors, and hopefully you guys have enjoyed to have an idea of how data privacy engineering can be a complex system. And thank you for Lisa for putting into perspective, especially when you mentioned the difference between the normal engineering of yes or no or on and off, to actually deep diving into the complexity or what it takes when somebody might design a system or the type of factor they should consider. Thanks for that. So while we're looking and waiting for any additional question, Kristen, will it be possible to load the poll for the session?
Most certainly, I'll get it started for you.
Thank you.
And Serge, let me say one thing. With you now, I have to tell you, now that you have privacy awareness, this is your first step of being a privacy engineer. Please continue to build that in everything you do, be it yourself, your family, your students, your world, because this is the way digital environments can be so successful, is that you trust what things are, what the digital world is doing with your data, and then vice versa. It can be used to add value back to you. So I just want to make sure you're very aware that you're now a privacy engineer. Step one.
So I need my certificate now as a privacy engineer. I'll add that my CV. Thank you, Lisa. It was very helpful and informative for me, and I hope you guys have enjoyed the session also. I think the poll is open at the moment, so please rate our session and let us know what we think and what we can do better for our next coming. Kristen?
Thank you, Serge. And there was one question, I don't remember if it was answered or not. If you want to take a look at it, I did assign it to you.
Yes, the question from yes, from Deborah.
Oh,
yes.
You did. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you. All right. I will go ahead and stop the recording then, and then we can do some more Q&A if it pops up.
Lisa, there's a question on the chat. If you're able to write the name of the book that you mentioned on the chat so people can have an idea, read the book if possible. And also have a question, just I think the last question just came now from, I think it's from Veronica. Let me see, she sent me on the chat. She asking about who should bear the breach in privacy in mobile banking. You have any idea?
Did you ask me a question? I'm sorry, I was typing to get that.
Yes, yes, I'm putting that question on the chat for everyone. Is about who's responsible on bearing the cost, or it is any breach into a privacy when using a mobile banking application, for example.
Yes. So that breach has legalities, right? So one of the areas that I'm really careful, I don't ever use my bank as my way of purchasing things. I use a credit card here in the States. And that's because my credit card has the $50 limit of what I'm liable for if it's found to be stolen. If you get into my bank account, they still will help you get it back usually, but it may take a lot longer and you don't have access to your bank account. Whereas with my credit card, I can have my second credit card, which I have two, so that I can always have a backup. So I think it's one of those things. So you have to be really careful with mobile banking. Many of the banks have done an awesome job of building it up, but because it is a great way to harm someone by taking their money, you know, there's always someone trying to break in. They move the bar up and someone's constantly trying to attack them. So they tend to have rules about them, depending on the country you're in, that the banking industry has to cover that breach because they are in charge of that protection. But you too have to be very aware of the it's not always that you're going to lose your money forever, but just the pain that you don't have access to something for a while. So I just would say they bear that unless they can prove that you did something to harm, you know, they opened up the door. You gave your password to someone else or something along that way. So yeah, financials are much stronger about both security and privacy in the sense of mobile banking. But the biggest thing has been, if you've noticed in a lot of the incidents, is that they take everybody's data and they move it to somewhere else. And sometimes it's ransomware, but now your data is not available. But now they've, you know, to your service that you're using, but it's available to someone else, and they can't prove that they ever got rid of, you know, did they sell it to someone else? Did they share it to someone else? So, and one thing I've had a lot of people ask is, well, why do I worry about privacy now that, you know, we've been digital for many, many years, so probably all my data's out in the market. Every day we're different, you know, we grow and we're different people and we get new things. And even if you've lost something in the past, it's best to protect it as we go forward. So especially now that more and more applications are sharing data, or functions are sharing data. I mean, once upon a time, like my smart meter on my house only went back to my to my electric company. Now it can be that they may sell that data to someone else to show that I was at home every day. You know, those types of things.
So I have a last question from Shankar. Like you mentioned about the GDPR for the EU, do we have any comparative policies or laws in the United States now, or something that is coming for the future?
We're hopeful. We're hopeful that under the new administration, they're going to look at a national law. But currently, we are broken up sectorially. So we have HIPAA for healthcare, we have FICA for the health for financial, we have the communications laws for when you pass data across wires. We are wireless. We have and then we have some states. CCPA, the California Consumer Protection Act, is in place. Virginia's in the process of building. Nevada has one they're working on. But what we really need for the US is to actually have a federal law, not only for our own protection, but for us to transfer data between ourselves and other nations. We are not at the same level, so we have to do a lot of work as companies, which is not the most efficient way because the US doesn't have a consistent law across the states. So what we have to do is do a contractual agreement, what we call a BCR, says we border cross border there for everything we do. So if we want to cross data from Cisco in Europe to Cisco in the US, we have to have these agreements in place so that our customers and our employees know that we're doing the right thing, because the European councils do not recognize US as being at the same level of privacy. So it's really important, if you have someone asking you, please push for federal law in the US. That would be very important to us as we go forward.
Yeah. I have another question.
I didn't want to be political, but I really do want you to think that way. So,
so what do you think about the use of metadata in terms of privacy?
Again, metadata is just like any of your other data. It can identify you. If it can identify you personal, and if it's personal, you need to make sure that people are using what some of our engineering teams call digital dust, that it's being used for your benefit and not your harm. And so you need to have the ability to consent for use of those things, or that it needs to be explicitly in the contract or in the notice before I start. So letting me know at the beginning that you're gathering this and it could be used lets me make a decision if I want to participate.
If you don't mind, before leaving the session again, can you write down the certification that you mentioned before at the beginning that they can go through if they want to learn?
IAPP has the CIPM and it has the CIPPE. The CIPM is the way that you build up this management for privacy, so it's a little bit more technical. The CIPPE, it talks a lot about how we got to GDPR, which is, like I said, the gold standard. And the CIPT is their certification on technology, which I'm getting ready to take. So I'm not really recommending it, but I did want to let you know it's there till I know what it's like. I hate to recommend, but I have my M and I have my E. The E really helps you understand the lifestyle, the lifetime of privacy, because much of privacy came after World War II because of the horrific killing of people per their personal data. They gathered their personal data and made decisions from that on who lived and who died. So that's why it's important for us to really understand how GDPR got there, because it truly is a human right. It's not just a legal statement for them.
Thank you. Yeah, as you can see, a lot of people have enjoyed the session, receiving a lot of thank you message. And I would also like to tell you thank you for the amazing session. A lot of information and valuable information. Thanks a lot. And I think we're ready to close the session. Thanks all of you for joining. I'm not sure if you have a last word, Lisa, for the closing.
I know, but like I said earlier, thanks for becoming a privacy engineer. And if you need anything, please go over to our trust portal. There's more information there, including some of this that I just typed in if you don't catch it here. So that you have your Cisco.com ability, you can get the trust portal at Cisco.com. So please use that.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.